Naomi and Sasha Banks gone from WWE. Pat McAfee, WWE news. Also, we got to talk about MLW. Some great news there. Guys, as always, the timestamps are in the description down below. Let's talk about MLW. They have released a press release today announcing that BeIN Sports will broadcast MLW on streaming and over-the-air channel in major markets, including LA, Chicago, and Dallas. So now they are expanding their agreement, which is awesome news. BeIN Sports and Major League Wrestling have announced an agreement for MLW content to broadcast on its free streaming and over-the-air channel BeIN Sports Extra. MLW will air on BeIN Sports Extra on Fridays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And then also keep in mind, BeIN Sports is completely free on this channel. So it is, this is going to be a really good spot for MLW. BeIN Sports Extra is available on pretty much all of the major streaming services, including Pluto TV, the Roku channel, YouTube TV, Samsung TV Plus, Redbox, Cloud TV, TiVo, Vizio, Xumo TV, and then obviously over the air, LA, Chicago, Philly, Dallas, Houston, San Jose, San Francisco, Oakland, Atlanta, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, San Diego, Salt Lake City, Hartford, Columbus, Las Vegas, and Austin. And there's many more markets, which could all be found on BeInSportsExtra.com. This is great news for MLW. Obviously, they're building this relationship with BeIN Sports. And, here's the thing. MLW is a relatively smaller company, but for them to have this many outlets for their content, it's just great news in general for this company. I think a lot of people are interested to see what MLW does because they don't necessarily stand out compared to maybe Impact, GCW, AEW, WWE, but they still have a pretty damn good product. And, when more people can access it for free, that means they have the ability to get new fans. MLW has not been silent. They've not been quiet. They brought in Killer Cross, Scarlett Bordeaux, which was really awesome. They've also brought in other notable names in recent history. So I think it's just a really good move for MLW, of course, with BeIN Sports. Having a partner like that is strong. It's not the biggest network, but at the end of the day, it's a pretty prominent spot for them. And, best of luck to MLW. Guys, Pat McAfee is apparently signing an exclusive contract with WWE that will keep him as the SmackDown commentator for many years to come. This is great news. When I say exclusive, it means that he won't be taking part in other wrestling companies, obviously. Pat McAfee signing this multi-year extension with WWE is just great news, honestly. He's a great analyst. I feel like he's brought out the best of Michael Cole. The idea that Pat McAfee is going to be in WWE for years to come is great news. He is definitely not a traditional commentator. He is definitely somebody I thought WWE might fire, just for the simple fact that I thought Vince McMahon would not like his kind of style to what he does. But honestly, his commentary makes things so much better. Plus, we've seen him at WrestleMania against Austin Theory. We're going to see him at SummerSlam against Baron Corbin. This guy, former NFL player, has a great podcast. I'm glad that, his unconventional way of analyzing wrestling, especially alongside Michael Cole, it's become a very strong suit for WWE SmackDown. I think there was this clip of Liv Morgan cashing in Money in the Bank, and just watching that clip from the commentator view with Cole and Pat McAfee, it was just really awesome to watch. And I think that's the type of stuff that makes wrestling fun at times. Pat McAfee with WWE for years to come, I think, is just great news in general. I'm very excited about this move. And I also want to mention too, WWE is reportedly going to be having the draft. I believe in September is the rumored time frame. I would love for WWE to switch up commentators, because I think, right now, when you look at Raw and you look at how heavy hitting that roster is, if you were to just keep that roster and put Pat McAfee there, I think it would spruce things up. I would also be very curious to see what it would sound like for SmackDown to maybe bring in Jimmy Smith, who is commentating on Raw, or Byron Saxton. Byron Saxton, Corey Graves, they're very much within their WWE personas. And I feel like Pat McAfee is just being himself. If you ever watch his podcast, it seems like his style on his podcast translates over to the WWE product. That could be a big win for WWE Raw. I don't know if WWE has plans on changing up commentary at any point, but if they do decide to switch it up, I think this would be a good idea. Pat McAfee's a rock star. Having him also wrestle is great. He did some great stuff in NXT against the Undisputed Era and, of course, Adam Cole. And then, of course, just seeing what he's done on SmackDown, he's been awesome. And sometimes, the show could have pretty bad creative or a pretty bad show, but One thing about commentary, and especially as somebody who has been pretty critical of Michael Cole, I feel like Michael Cole has definitely elevated his commentary skills by working with Pat McAfee, and they're just great. They have great chemistry. This is a great win for WWE, and obviously seeing him there with Vince McMahon, Triple H, Stephanie McMahon at the UFC event, that goes to show you how happy they are. WrestleVotes also mentioned that this was great news for a lot of people in WWE, so obviously I'm not the only person being a fan of this. And for our final story of today's video, guys, Sasha Banks and Naomi, it appears that we finally got some more clarification on what is happening. So PW Insider has reported earlier today that Banks and Naomi were officially removed from the internal WWE roster sometime within the last 24 hours. The news about their exit is not a total surprise because it was reported a few weeks ago that Banks and her attorneys involved to work out the details of her release. Now, it is unknown what the terms are of their release from WWE and if there's a non-compete involved, but at some point they will be free to sign with any wrestling company in the world, including AEW and Impact Wrestling. Now, for those who don't know, if you currently go on WWE.com, it does show that Banks and Naomi are still listed as part of the active roster. However, on social media, more specifically Instagram, Mercedes Varnado on Instagram no longer has any references to WWE. She is called a professional wrestler, as well as Naomi. So Naomi, going by the name Trinity Fatu, professional wrestler, is in her bio as well. So originally when we talked about Sasha Banks being in WWE or being released by WWE, there was no sort of clarification on Naomi. Now it appears Naomi is no longer on that internal list. WWE has yet to comment publicly on whether or not they've been released, but based on this report from PW Insider, this could be a really good indication that they are no longer with the company, which, if you're asking me for my opinion is pretty simple. Mercedes Varnado, Trinity Fatu, both incredible superstars. They will both be successful wherever they go. I think a lot of people are looking at Sasha Banks going to Hollywood. I think Trinity Fatu will be great pretty much in any wrestling company. So very, very interesting to see what happens. You never know. A lot of people still believe this is a work. This is going to be very, very interesting. The next few months will be very telling. If we see Mercedes show up on AEW or Trinity Fatu show up in AEW, then obviously these reports are confirmed to be true. But ultimately, very interesting in my opinion. I'm excited to see what happens next. It's kind of odd that WWE hasn't necessarily been public about it, but ultimately WWE has found themselves in some weird situations lately with public relations and headlines and stuff like that. So I totally understand why.